Welcome to EnRich Relationships, a podcast designed to help leaders improve their personal and professional relationships from a father and son team.
We each bring executive corporate experience in both public and private companies, as well as personal experience as brothers, fathers, and sons. I'm Dax Rich.
And I'm Larry Rich, and together we discuss different leadership skills and concepts that will help you at work and at home. Today we'll talk about the poison of micromanaging. Micromanaging is trying to force things to be the way that you want them to be, or leading in a way that you feel like you need to be the one totally in control and making sure that everything happens according to your will. And immediately this sends a message that your way is the only way, and that those who you've hired start to feel, or those who are on the team for a while, start to recognize that they're not really in any kind of a leadership position, that all leadership decisions and any kind of collaboration really looks to you to be the one to make the decision or to lead the direction. And so micromanaging can really tighten and can really destroy any opportunity to create ideas that can benefit other people. It can be very destructive to future development of ideas or work environment.
As we were preparing for the episode, we talked a lot about how it really just impedes trust. One of the big issues with micromanaging is that it creates this environment where people feel like they have to look behind their shoulder at every turn, and they feel like they're in a place where their manager, their leadership team doesn't trust the unique contribution that they bring to the table. Rather, they feel like they're a yes person. They need to just do what they're told and meet specific quotas instead of breaking those barriers or trying new things, being innovative. And so there's that trust that really we wanted to talk about here, especially as we talk about how do you enrich a relationship. Well, you can't do that if there's no trust, as we've talked about in many episodes. So we wanted to talk today about why it's important to avoid micromanaging, as well as where does it come from. And I'll just give perhaps a quick background on that. Maybe I'll use a personal example here as we talk about micromanaging. I remember when I first stepped into management, I got a little bit of training, which was very helpful and valuable. But a lot of the training that I got up front was more task-oriented, and it was focused on performance. And the danger there is that I walked into my role as a manager with the impression that I really needed to focus on delivering results as opposed to empowering my team or helping them to deliver results. I felt more like it was my job to get the results out of them than it was me to help them to be their best self so they could achieve the best results. And really, a great manager is a great leader who can lead people to be successful as opposed to being behind them and whipping them into shape. So in that early stage of my management career, I remember that constantly in our one-on-ones with my manager and my skip level manager, we were talking about metrics and how my team was performing and who I needed to push harder and what I could do each day to make sure that they were delivering results, which in theory were good ideas, but without that background of trust, as well as with the insecurity I felt as a brand new manager, it turned into me being a micromanager. It turned into every day I would reach out to individuals on my team, specifically those who weren't performing at the bar, and I would say, what are you doing right now? Can I see your work? I'm going to shadow you an additional hour today. And all these things where I was really, really pressing down on them. And they said, I know what I need to do. I just need a little bit of coaching and then let me do my job. But again, I felt that feeling of if I don't micromanage these people, if I'm not on them every moment, then I'm going to get in trouble, or I'm going to feel like I failed, or my manager's going to say you could have done more. All these feelings of insecurity and doubt about myself, as opposed to thinking, well, how can I empower this person to truly deliver these results? Or what coaching do I need to give them so that they can be successful and I can take a step back and trust them?
You mentioned a really great point, Dax, about insecurity. And I think many times, and those who are listening many times, will be managers who come into a position and they're responsible for people under them. And in that position, many times there's that feeling of I need to establish myself, that I'm the expert, or I need to have credibility, or people need to look to me as the leader. And that really should already be assumed by the title and the fact that that person's been brought into that position. So that feeling of insecurity or fear that comes from micromanaging is completely the opposite of what can happen if a new manager or someone who's coming in taking a position with a team that already exists looks to the team to say, hey, I really want to learn more about you as a team. As your leader, I recognize I need to get to know each of you. I need to know your strengths. I need to know what it is that you feel we can accomplish as a team. And then how can I lead that? It's kind of like the orchestra director or the choir director. That may change, but the members of the orchestra or the choir are still the same, and they still have their talents. And each piece that they or part that they play in that choir or that orchestra is essential to the whole. And no one looks at the conductor as being the expert violinist or the perfect flautist or whatever else. They're the leader. And so those feelings of insecurity and fear, it's really important to just more put it out there and just say, hey, as your leader, my best work comes from what you do and leading you to be successful. And I think the more as managers, as leaders, that we can create that environment rather than I need everybody that comes to this team to know that I am the manager, I am the leader. They already know that. I think that can be a much more positive way to establish ourselves as a leader rather than doing it by micromanaging.
We talked about as well that it's really systemic micromanaging in the sense that and perhaps we can go back to my story of being a brand new manager, if my manager and skip level manager also felt like they needed to micromanage me and follow up with me, perhaps to an inappropriate amount, because I do think there is a level of follow up that's good, but coming in and checking the basic work and not trusting me, that just spreads. It becomes something where your manager doesn't trust you, so you as a manager don't trust your team, and you need to micromanage. And it's this whole chain where everybody is micromanaging each other, and that affects the entire culture of the business, of the organization, and it creates a low trust environment. Really what we talked about is the importance of having one person who says, I'm going to break this chain of micromanaging. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to truly trust my team. When I talk to my leaders, I'm going to say I've had the appropriate coachings with them. I trust that they'll get the work done. If they don't, they know what those next steps are. But I'm not going to be the one who is constantly checking on them or making them feel like I don't believe in them or I don't trust them. And I'm going to trust that I've done my job as a coach and as a leader to help them be successful. And that takes a lot of leadership courage to be that person to say that. It's very hard to let go of those reins and to really trust a person. But that's how people unlock their feeling of purpose, their feeling of meaning, as they are given that free rein and that opportunity to just do the work that they were hired to do.
In the beginning, we called this particular podcast The Poison of Micromanaging. And like a poison that spreads or it causes illness, micromanaging also, many times, as you mentioned, Dax, can be systemic. It can start with a skip level boss. It can be the boss right above. It can come from different places. But one of the most important things in a situation where there's micromanagement going on is to really talk about it and to identify it. And though that may be uncomfortable, most managers do not want to be micromanagers, but it's usually the ones that micromanage the most that see it the least. And so it can be really helpful to identify, hey, I feel like this is how I'm being micromanaged. It's not allowing me to be creative. And in some ways, I fear any kind of conversation because I'm afraid that this could lead to negative feelings. I feel like it's important as a result of feeling micromanaged that we all are the same, that basically we're all soldiers marching in the same direction and we're all very uniform. And because of that, it does create sameness or reward sameness. And that can be very detrimental in any kind of a project, especially anything that involves creativity. And the other thing is it will fortify tradition as far as if we're not where we want to be and we keep looking for a way to get there, by doing this over and over and over, we're never going to get there. So I think presenting those kind of ideas can be very helpful in a conversation where there's micromanagement involved.
I think that's a great segue as we talk about what does this look like at home. I think we see a lot of micromanaging specifically in relationships, whether that's with a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, could even be with parents, but where there's that relationship where you want another person to have that sameness as you want to be in sync with them. Might come from a good place. You just want to be on the same page. You want to be moving forward in the same direction. It's tempting and easy to be a micromanager, just like it's easy to be micromanaged. where there's a low trust environment in those relationships. And the danger there is, again, that people feel like they aren't unique. People feel like they can't bring something unique to that relationship, whatever it may be. And as you said, it's so important that there's talking going on, that there's a communication, whether it's you being micromanaged, saying, I feel like I'm being micromanaged by you. Let me share with you what that feels like, as well as what I'd like to see different. And then on the reverse, if you realize that you might be micromanaging somebody in a relationship, having that leadership courage to break the chain and say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to trust my spouse, my significant other, my parent, my children. I love them. I'm going to trust that they're going to make the right choice. And if not, then I can talk to them. And if I feel like they are doing something that's not in sync with me or is something I don't align with, then I'll talk to them. But I'm not going to micromanage them and force them to change.
Well, and I love the way you worded that question, because I think micromanagers tend to ask the what question. What are you doing? What's going to happen? Or all the what questions rather than how questions. How questions like, how would be the best way for us to accomplish this goal? Or how has your experience been in working with this? Those kind of questions, I think, tend to elicit creativity and do exactly the opposite of micromanaging. Or how can I help you in the work that you're doing today? All those kind of things that allow creativity on the person's part rather than, I'm going to tell you what to do today, or I don't think you're doing what I think you ought to be doing, so therefore I'm going to micromanage you. Hopefully those ideas, as you've talked about, Dax, will build trust, especially by eliminating fear, encouraging conversation, and really building that trust that you've talked about throughout this podcast. Thank you for tuning into today's episode, and be sure to check out our other episodes where we explore additional ways to enrich your relationships at work and with your family.
Before you take off, we invite you to subscribe and share what you liked from this episode with friends, colleagues, and family. Take a moment and share feedback and suggestions with us directly at enrichrelationshipspodcast@gmail.com.
Lasting change comes from enriching your relationships both at work and at home.